Gather close while I share a tale of fire and frozen doom. Before we begin, press your palm upon that small carved rune, the one that marks your approval. Then pass this story on, so our light may travel farther than any raven's wings. Now hush, for the parchment waits. Long ago, 8,000 years before Aegon's landing, say the oldest runes, a darkness smothered the world. Winter lasted a generation. Starving towns and kingdoms alike, pale demons called the others, marched out of the frozen far north, raising the dead to swell their ranks until a last hero rallied men and the children of the forest at the battle for the dawn and drove the shadows back. All this, the songs insist, happened long before dragons ever darkened Westerosi skies. Yet what if those icy horrors chose another hour? What if they rose while Aegon Targaryen, the Dragon Lord of Dragonstone, still breathed flame into a newly united realm? Picture the young kingdom in the 4th year after the conquest. King's Landing was little more than muddy lanes and half-raised stone walls surrounding Aegon Fort. The Iron Throne, hammered from 1,000 surrendered blades, still smoldered at its seams, each twist of metal hot as a branding iron. King Aegon, tall and broad-shouldered, spent half the year on royal progresses to bind lords to his justice, and the other half building ports and storehouses for a capital he could scarcely yet imagine. Beside him ruled his sister queens, stern Visenya, whose sword Dark Sister drank blood when words failed, and lyrical Rhaenys, whose laughter sounded like harp strings, and whose dragon Meraxes was as graceful in the clouds as she was in a ballroom. Their sons, Aenys, a gentle boy of 10, and Maegor, a fierce babe barely walking, waited in the shadows cast by 3 dragons. Balerion the Black Dread, wings so wide they could eclipse a sunrise. Vhagar, green brass and savage, and silver-white Meraxes, swift as a gull and twice as deadly. It was harvest tide when the first raven arrived from the wall. Its message spoke of a patrol found frozen solid near the gorge, sword still sheathed, eyes crusted milky white. The parchment smelled of pine pitch and fear. Aegon summoned the small council to the torchlit hall of Aegon Fort. Orys Baratheon, Lord Hand, and the king's own half-brother slammed a mailed fist on the map table. "We ride north immediately," he growled. Grand Maester Gawain stroked his beard, insisting that ghost stories belonged among serving girls, not rulers. Visenya's single gray eye silenced him. "If these are children's tales," she said, "they have found grown men to bury." Rhaenys touched the ice-rimed raven feather, shivered, and whispered, "Cold winds truly are rising." Aegon gave his order then and there. Every lord would muster men at Moat Cailin within a moon's turn, and the dragons would fly ahead to see this threat with their own eyes. They crossed the neck under low, iron-colored skies. At Winterfell, Brandon Stark, son of Torren, the king who knelt, greeted them in a yard blanketed by an early snow. The direwolves howled night and day, he said, as though they sensed an ancient enemy's footfall. Livestock were born still and stiff. Hunters found prints they could not track, because snow no longer accepted the weight of those who left them. Aegon felt winter's bite settle into his bones, yet pressed on to the wall in hopes that proof would serve better than rumor. When they crested the King's Road, Castle Black loomed against a leaden horizon. The wall itself, 300 miles long and 700 feet high, glittered blue and spiteful under a pale sun. Lord Commander Harmon Hoarfrost met them at the gate, a bear-sized man whose beard crackled with rhyme each time he spoke. His tale was worse than Brandon's. 3 rangings vanished east of Craster's Keep, while horn blasts floated back twisted, as if the cold itself warped sound. Tracks showed boots marching beside clawed feet, then ended mid-drift. "If something walks south," Hoarfrost said, "it leaves no shadow in daylight." That night, the great snowy silence broke. From the haunted forest came a swirling wall of storm, as if a blizzard had grown teeth. Torches sputtered. Within the white veil moved figures, corpses in torn black cloaks, eyes shining blue as star ice. Flaming arrows hissed as wind killed their fire. The dead men climbed the wooden stockade at the Shadow Tower with inhuman strength. Visenya cried out and Vigar dove, unleashing a torrent of green gold flame that lit the storm like dawn. Corpses blackened and fell, but amid their ashes strode taller shapes clad in armor that looked spun from moonlight. Others, one raised an arm and launched a spear of solid ice clear into the clouds. The weapon struck Merax's hind wing, ripping a gash long as a ship. The dragon shrieked, a sound to make stone weep, and tumbled through the burning sleet. Rhaenys clung to her saddle, hair whipping into cinders, while Merax's barely managed to land on the wall's crest, blood hissing into steam. Balerion answered with a scream of living furnace. Fire 7 times hotter than a smithy's heart poured upon the white warrior who had thrown the spear. Crystal armor exploded, sending shards whirling like razors. Yet most of the others withdrew into Night's Cloak, unharmed, but for their fallen. The first clash was a draw. Meraxes crippled, the wall shaken, the realm's hope trimmed by a single throw of ice. Inside the garrison's hall, Maesters applied valerian leaves and molten glass to the dragon's wound, yet all understood no poultice could fully heal such damage when made by frost. Rhaenys, throat ragged from smoke, asked softly how the first heroes had prevailed. "Dragonglass," murmured a recruit from Skagos. "Old Nan used to say obsidian drinks the cold." The words clawed into Aegon's mind like a spur. Before dawn, he dispatched Jon Mooten, a knight raised near the North's wild borders, to seek the hidden enclaves of the Children of the Forest and beg their knowledge. Mooten returned in 3 days with a sack of slick black knives and a promise. The children would lend craft, if men lent courage. At once, Aegon converted Castle Black's courtyards into forges. Balerion's breath melted wall ice into vast trenches. Smiths from the Stormlands mixed obsidian shards into blister-hot steel, casting arrowheads that glittered between black and blood red. Each brother of the Watch received one. Even stable boys carried dagger hilts wrapped in weirwood bark. They named themselves Knights of Shadow and Flame, and the title stuck like tar. Visenya refused to stay behind walls. Mounting Vhagar, despite her own freshly bandaged arm, she ranged eastward through the endless night. Under a pearl-skinned moon, she found an other, leading a dozen wights along the King's Road. She plummeted, cut the pale demon in half with Dark Sister, and watched its armor burst like frost-brittle glass. The wights fell lifeless. She returned with handfuls of shattered crystal. Even held over coals, the shards dripped freezing mist. Maesters agreed such substance could only be slain with heat hotter than mortal furnaces could give, or the opposite element, frozen flame trapped within obsidian. As autumn collapsed into a winter sharper than any living memory, hunger marched south faster than any army. Rivers froze, grain ships stuck in harbor ice. Yet help came from unlikely sands. Princess Maria Martell, called the Yellow Toad of Dawn, sent palanquins laden with orangewood crates. Inside lay spears tipped with Dornish glass and letters of truce. "When the cold conquers," she wrote, "it crowns no lords. Let us stand together." Aegon accepted, and a generation of pointless raids upon Red Mountains ended not with fire, but frost. Meanwhile, the others prepared their own stroke. Scouts reported an army of dead moving across the long lake, 30,000 corpses marching atop ice turned opal with moonlight. Lord Umber, huge as the beast his sigil bore, massed axes along the western shore. House Manderley shipped salted cod and dragonglass bolts from White Harbor. Aenys Targaryen, barely 10, watched from Winterfell's Godswood, clutching a child-sized Arak carved from black stone. The world waited, breath fogging like ghosts. When the enemy reached mid-lake, Balerion took wing. Aegon guided the Black Dread into the stratosphere until even he could hear blood thrum in his ears. Then both dragon and king folded like an arrow and dived. Fire blasted the ice, shattering a league-wide plate in seconds. Steam columns rose sky-high, turning the lake into a cauldron. Whites flailed in boiling black water. Yet amidst the clouds of vapor, taller shapes strode unfazed, freezing each step anew to form a bridge of living winter. Visenya hurled herself from Vhagar's saddle onto an ice ledge, Dark Sister carving arcs of onyx light. Brothers of the Watch fired obsidian-tipped arrows that screamed through the superheated air. Each time an arrow struck another, armor and flesh alike fractured into diamond snow. But for everyone that fell, more dead waited on deforming ice. The fight lasted until sunrise found its own face reflected in crimson water. 200 Northmen died that dawn. Vhagar earned a wicked gash across her belly, sizzling whenever breath touched it. Yet the undead army lay scattered beneath the new cracked lake. Triumph tasted of ash when maesters counted dwindling stores. The dragons, creatures of furnace heat, suffered cracked scales and sluggish blood in this unnatural cold. Meraxes' wound refused to close. Balerion roared softer each dawn. Aegon convened his war council and declared the realm lacked years to fight a war of attrition. They must strike at the source, some stronghold where the Night King, if such a being truly commanded the others, wove his storms. Rumor named the Heart of Winter, a crystalline keep beyond the Milkwater, where curtains of green aurora draped obsidian towers. Lord Commander Hoarfrost volunteered to guide an assault. Oris Baratheon would lead 200 seasoned men. And, despite every plea, Queen Rhaenys insisted on going, astride bandaged Meraxes, so that flame might carry hope to the farthest dark. On the first night of the new year, the vanguard set off. Black cloaks flapping, ghost torches sputtering violet flame, and Queen Rhaenys singing low in Valyrian, so her dragon beat wings in rhythm. Castle Black's courtyards felt emptier than tombs after they passed. Aegon placed his gauntleted hand upon the weirwood-inlaid hilt of Blackfire and whispered a promise to meet them on the battlefield's far side. 7 days crawled by. No raven returned. The wall groaned beneath fresh snowdrifts, as though it sensed weight beyond its northern face. Then, without warning, the sky exploded. Aurora lights shattered like glass, raining sparks brighter than noon onto the world below. A pillar of blue-white flame, wide as the Manda River, climbed heavenward far beyond the tree line. Castle Black shook so hard, icicles shattered from battlements. Men fell to their knees in prayer or terror. That is where I pause, good listener. Stoke your fires and ready your heart, for the rest of this saga waits in the next roll of parchment. Dawn is not yet won, and the night has one last secret to surrender. When you are warm again, return, and we shall face it together.